Gopal. I'm from Software Engineer. My question is to Mr. SK. Can you hear me?
Not really. I have a selective hearing problem. Selective, okay?
Okay, the question is, most of the friends whom I had spoken to who are PMP certified, they say that most of the knowledge what you have acquired during the PMP certification process, you actually don't apply it in the real time. It's not that I'm going to sit down and write the project charter and the scope management plan and project management plan and everything, and then I go through the iterations. It's just basically the common sense how we manage your stakeholders and then see that the project is met within the deadline and within the cost. So on the one side we hear such inputs, on the other side the industry is gearing towards the PMP certification. So what is your take on this?
Well, that's a very good question, and in fact, it's not the first time I hear this. If I may, the question is about during the PMP certification program, the process, the so-called the PMP to be spend their effort to learn the PMBOK, to do the exams and so on. But when he or she obtain the PMP certifications, in real life, he may not have the opportunity to use all of them. Am I right to say that? I think first and foremost, you must understand the difference and how PMI positions the PMBOK, the Project Management Body of Knowledge. The PMBOK is positioned as is to provide you a wider perspective when you are approaching projects. What do we mean by wider perspective? When you play the role as the customer, when you play the role as subcontractor, when you play the role as prime contractor. Wider perspective is also means at the beginning of the projects, middle of the projects, and towards the end of the projects, and so on. So PMI take two very strong positions in the PMBOK. Number one is that it is the responsibility of the PMP to choose and pick which processes, which knowledge he has to apply onto the project. That's the first position PMI take too. The second position was the project is coming from customer perspective. Okay? When we talk about project, you start from the first person, the project sponsor. The first process, you talk about develop project charter with the project managers. We are talking about the project manager from the customer perspective, who need to do the planning from stakeholders to scope, to time, to cost, to so on and so forth. Okay? That is how the whole framework is coming from the customer perspective. Now, what's happening here in where you are, and I've been through that as well. When I first started out my career with that company with the red logo, do we see the entire big picture when we coming into the project? Unfortunately, we did not. We only see one tape at that point in time, go into the customer side, upon installations, we declare project success. But after the system is installed, no customer use it, and we still declare it as project success. So with that, when you play the role as project manager from vendor perspective, you only use very limited part of your knowledge you acquire. Another situation, there are many multinational companies based in Cyberjaya. One of them is reasonably big, and I have a student there. He came to me and said, SK, I think I'm leaving. I said, why? Good money, and so on and so forth. He said, I am being assigned to do a project to relocate a machine in Sydney from data center A to data center B for a 3 months duration. I said, that is good for you. But what did I end up? I only ended up conference call and conference call and conference call. Yeah? To coordinate the team. Then I said, don't you have a plan to do a site visit? No. The plan say I do not. Then do you know why you do this project? I don't know. My job as a project manager is actually going down to as a project coordinator. So to answer your questions, if you want to have an opportunity to try out all the different aspects of the project management you have learned through the PMP certifications, start from clean, join and end user organizations. You start from develop project charter, you go through the contract negotiations, you go through the time, you go through the scope and so on. You have to go through the make and buy decision, which part of the work is good to give to the contractor, which part you should do it yourself. You just don't repeat another mistake commonly made. Who should do the user requirement? Buyer or seller? Who? Many of you, system integrator, software vendor, you submit a proposal to the customer and you say, customer, give me the contract, I can do the user requirement for you. After the project kick off, you go into the project team and you say, end user, what do you want? And the end user look at you and say, you're supposed to tell me what do I need? You're supposed to be the expert, right? So simple thing like this. If you go to the PMP certifications, you know which piece of the work should be kept between you as a buyer. Which piece of the work is good to transfer out. But when you transfer the risk. So make sure the contractor can do it faster, cheaper, and better than you. So all in all, it's going to take a long time to explain when to use all. Even personally, myself, have gone through the PMP certifications, but there are certain areas I have not had an opportunity to use it yet. Okay? Such as the entire spectrum of earned value management. Remember, PMP still remember the CPI, SPI formula, and so on? There are certain areas, certain contracting model is so new, which is not applicable to this country yet, such as cost reimbursement. However, if you go for PMP certification, you would be able to tell yourself and also the company and your country that there are certain things we have done is wrong, such as the BOO, Build, Operate, and Own model. You're going to tell your company, the nation, there's something called BOB, right? The highway project in this country, build, operate, the operator cannot survive, and build out. We call build, operate, and build out. So all in all, I strongly believe that PMP will provide you enough knowledge. As I say so, you must have experience to know when to apply. So if you don't have experience to apply the knowledge you have, it is about time to update your resume. Luckily, we don't have Job Street here. I hope I answer your questions.
Next, I saw someone raise a hand. Yeah.
Hello. Good morning. My name is Melvin from Tricycle IT. We are a software vendor that provide solutions to financial institutions for compliance reporting. Most of the times, our projects are part of bigger projects in the banks. So I would like to actually ask this question to Vernon with relation to the practicability of SCRUM project management, especially in the areas of cost control or budget. As what SK has pointed out, that as a buyer, which means the bank, they actually have a fixed budget. So from a software vendor perspective, how do we actually introduce agile kind of project management that that can actually deliver within the cost, especially when you have you are part of a bigger project plan in the bank. Thank you.
So one of the important concepts in Scrum is a value, and the value is commitment. Whenever we talk about commitment, one of the things we're careful about is we never commit on behalf of someone else. So if you're asking me as part of a significant contract where there are multiple subcontractors, I can commit for what I'm responsible for. I certainly can't commit outside of that. we do a great deal of outsourcing, and I'm not at all concerned about fixed time or fixed price deals. In fact, I'm confident, as I said earlier, we can always deliver something on time. And if you have a certain budget, we can always deliver you with something on that budget. The question is what this something is. And despite what anyone would like to imagine, it's impossible in most cases to deliver everything that a customer would like within their budget and their time constraints. So the big benefit that we have with an agile approach is that we basically turn those decisions about what is going to be delivered back to the customer. They decide through their prioritization, through their ordering of the work, if they do an effective job of prioritizing the work in the order of its business value, yeah, then they can get back a lot of business value, and they get something on a date or at a certain budget. Is that everything they wanted? Perhaps, if their understanding of what they wanted was really, really firm at the beginning of the project, and if it was accurately articulated. Our experience is that's seldom the case, that in fact, they don't know what they want, and they really have no way of knowing what they want until we start giving them things that they can look at. But with those foundations in place, we can, especially applying principles like the Pareto principle that I mentioned earlier, the 80-20 rule. We spend about 20% of the effort getting about 80% of the effect. They see all of that effect, and often, since we still have from perhaps the original schedule or the original budget 80% left, we have a lot of flexibility to put other scope in that may be different than the scope they originally envisioned, but maybe quite a lot more valuable. So whenever we are dealing with multiple parties, the real challenge comes with late integration is always an issue. And so while we could be very agile and delivering our parts and giving the customer good reviews of what they're going to get very early in the process, if others are following a different process, when we get to the end where things need to integrate, we can run across the same types of problems that we have in traditional projects. So I don't think there's an easy solution to that problem other than other people also acting in an agile and iterative sense. Many organizations look, I think, to the wrong, two things I think they look at in the wrong way. So one thing that they look at in the wrong way is that productivity is the key factor. We can spend the same amount of time doing something that is very valuable or doing something that is not valuable at all. And both of those could be a large volume of work. So productivity is not as important as focusing on value. The slide that SK put up towards the end, that is Agilist, we value value more than we value control. So that's one area where I think we often go a bit sideways. The other area I think that we often go a bit sideways is thinking that plans are accurate and that we'll be able to make things according to plan. Our experience indicates that we're very poor at planning. And so doing things early, getting feedback early, is really the essence of being able to do any kind of complex work in an effective way. If third-party suppliers aren't really able to accommodate that, then you have high risk at the end. And unfortunately, there's not an easy way to avoid that I'm aware of.
What about project closure? When do we know that it's the right time to actually consider that the project is already successfully implemented? Because from a software vendor perspective, I have fixed resources cost to consider. I cannot continuing onwards on a time and material basis
And so as I've said, if you have a fixed date, you deliver on the date, project is over. Right? That was the fixed date. Project is done. Whether you got everything that you wanted or not is something that we cannot control. You might have added a bunch of things during the project that would push other things outside of that time window. But the date is the date, right? December 31st is not going to change. What I can guarantee is that I will give you something on December 31st. The same is true with budget, right? If you only have $1,000 to spend, $1,000, project is over. The $1,000 is gone. You may have added a lot of requirements that may have pushed other things out, and those things won't be done. Yeah? If you want all of those things, then you consider, okay, do I need to continue? And now we would talk about perhaps having a new contract. One of the things that I often tell people about, and this goes back to my comment about fast fail earlier, my concern is that most organizations, they make bad business decisions because they're not looking at delivering something that's minimal and validating the value of that. And so we often say in Agile that good Agile projects finish early. And it's not that they finish early because we're remarkably more productive. The fact is that if we look at, especially in software, but across a variety of industries, the number of features that are added that have no value add are very high. In class, I often use the example. I drive a BMW. There's this little button on my BMW that's called DTC. I push that button, and a light comes on in my dash. I have no idea what that button does. Maybe all it does is turn the light on in the dash. And my point is, I paid for that, but it's not valuable to me. It would have been much more valuable to me as an end user for BMW to have never included that feature and for the car to have cost me less. And that would have taken less time and it would have taken less money. So a good Agile project, you may very well not hit the target date because you've already given your customer the most valuable thing that you could give them before you ever got there. Does it mean that there was everything in this long list of requirements? No, that long list of requirements comes from a legacy perspective that I'm only going to apply for this budget once, and so I'm going to include every damn thing I can think of in this bucket of requirements, and then I'm going to add on top of that. But a lot of that stuff is statistically never used. Get rid of the stuff that's never used, focus on the essence, and you could easily save yourselves a lot of money, and you could deliver your project early. To me, that's Agile thinking. That's where I think organizations need to be going instead of continuing to cling on to a legacy mindset that I know what I want and this is it, and then fighting the scope creep continuously through the project cycle.
Yes, press the button. Hello, hello. Huh?
I think it follows on from what we were just talking about. If I'm working, sorry, my name's David Beasley, working with T-Systems, by the way. If I'm working in a large and traditional project management organisation, what are some of the challenges that I may face in trying to bring an agile methodology into that organisation?
Anyone?
I think I will leave the difficult part to Vernon and the rest. Let me share with you, back in 2008 and 2009, when we started out to form the Malaysian Scrum user group, and we have a couple of what we call early, so-called, early adapters and so on. One of them was a bigger bank, one of the biggest bank in Malaysia. The other one is so-called the top 20 public listed company in Malaysia. So they send their people, a couple of them, CIO, CTO, and senior management to learn about Scrums as well. So 6 months later, we have a user group. We get together and say, can you share with us your experience, right? So I'm just repeating what they said to me. The one from the bank said, SK, documentations, audit trail, approval has been there for 30 to 40 years, ever since the banking industry established in this country. You want me to use Agile Scrum, minimum documentations, minimum control, right? Minimums and this and that. You must be a joke. That was his comment. Because in banking and finance environment is highly regulated. Before you do, you ask. Before you do, you wait for approval. Once you get approval, you still wait until it formalizes the approval. Then you start. When something goes wrong, you get an audit trail to point to. So with that, it was difficult for them. The other vendor, the other company, they are in the hospitality business and so on. The tough part for them was working software which welcome changes, but their lawyer only allowed to sign fixed price contract. And they talk to, same as my experience, they gone through many contractors, their preferred contractor and so on, and no one willingly to sign a fixed price contract with them. So that was the two experience I would like to share with you, you know. And when it comes to decision making, project manager is probably at level 6, Scrum Master is probably at level 6, level 7 within a public listed company. Who called the shots? The lawyer. Who called the shot? The CFO, and so on. That was this, you know, all the compliances department. The difficult one then go to you guys.
Just to share, to add, what SK said, and coming from my experience of talking to customers who are thinking about moving to Agile but facing challenges, it comes in various levels and forms. One is many people still have the misconception about Agile. Many team members that I talk to, they think it means no process. It means no control. It's still cowboy coding. I don't have to do any documentation. I don't have to do a lot of stuff. So that's challenge one. Getting the buy-in from people to move away from the traditional way of thinking to Agile. It's not going to be easy for somebody who's going to advocate that to the company and make that move. As SK mentioned, people have been doing that for 30 to 40 years, and thinking, making them to get to a new one is going to be a big challenge itself. And the second one is, and I say, it's like the Newton's law of motion. An object doesn't move or continues to move the same way unless there's an external force on it. So somebody has to take that call. Either the management or it could be the customers. Asking for the change. In the development team. And that's exactly, or even the technical team could themselves, volunteer up saying that, oh yeah, it's good, we need to align ourselves with the business, with the business goals. So, let's do this. But there has to be some kind of force, that is going to call for that change. Once that happens, it could be, you can go to the next level, and of course, in that level of execution, in terms of what practices of Agile will be really applicable. How can you apply, the practices that Agile says in theory in the real world? Many industries, different industries have different requirements. Agile, there are several methodologies as well. So what would be the best practice? And to me, I keep saying this, Agile, you have to choose, the practices that would be more appropriate, that would make sense, right? It doesn't have to be the Agile in theory. It's about, getting those and implementing it. And implementation has to be all the way across all the lines of business. There must be a customer participation from the business side, and of course the development team have to do this, and you have to get involvement from the operations as well. So these three things, teams have to come together, and so that execution is very important. And the fourth one is you usually start with a one project team, right? And I recommend to go for a medium-sized project. Not a small one. You can't, you won't have a value to show, or not a very big project team. That's not going to be easy as well. So a mid-sized project team, to start with, and to document, the outcome of that. There could be a lot of failures, along the way. Document those failures, the lessons learned from those mistakes, and use that, to get a buy-in from the other development teams, right? That's how I have seen, large, enterprises, getting into the Agile. So I would say, these are the challenges that you probably would face, when you try to implement Agile in an enterprise.
For my take, if I can't answer from a point of large enterprises such as banking and finances, but because the group that I'm working on is actually relatively small, so what we actually, well, I mean, what I experienced and actually why I managed to influence is that we started out with actually my team actually started with using Scrum and or any kind of agile methodology, and then as we progresses, we managed to show the organization that actually with agile, right, we actually can deliver more than actually what we expect to be. So when as we mature over time, if I'm not mistaken, it's about 3 to 4 months. We managed to influence other teams that actually also was also keen to how come we can deliver with only such a small team, we can deliver so much with it. Well, at that point of view, my team was actually not only just because they practices agile, I would say the correct attitude as well. With the correct attitude and the correct passion of these few core people, you can actually influence other team as well. Let's say, for example, this auditorium room. On the right-hand side, you have one team who actually practices agile, whereas these two sides over here doesn't practice agile, still traditional. Now, if this team on the right-hand side can actually produce more than actually what the other two teams have, can you imagine what is the impact over it? So the management will be asking, how come on this side you guys can produce more than the other two? So your answer is actually, you guys actually are doing agile. And the method that actually you're using, that actually is far more efficient. The thing is that in terms of overall, in the business profit or from a point of view of a CEO, right, you look at it, in such a small team, you actually can deliver more than a traditional one. And that, from that point onwards, right, the CEO, I mean, whoever that's on top, or the chief CEO, you actually ask, why don't the other two teams move on to agile instead? Now, I don't just answer in a point of view, why don't you apply agile one? It can be any kind of view. It can be sales point of view, it can be business point of view, it can be IT development point of view. All right? That's my take on it.
Just to add a little bit, we have the similar scenario in my company as well. And I would like to summarize just one thing. Inter-department politics. That can be quite a huge I would say an issue when we first want to start up. PMO has this whole set of guidelines and about how to run projects and they know best and they've seen all kinds of projects and experience and so on and so forth. So a whole written documentation about how to in any situation how to problem solve. And then we've got the software development section there that we say Scrum is the best, Agile is the best, and way to go, and so on and so forth. So then we're just starting out and applying, but then the project management have always run the projects in a different way, and deliveries from an Agile perspective is very different. And how do we have deliverables from a software development department and put it together into the whole project can be quite complicating in the beginning, especially when people don't understand about how to use Agile in the best way possible. Agile is a very high level framework, but it can be used it must be used with what SK calls it, skill and experience. You cannot apply Agile in every circumstances. And the way you apply is also very different to achieve high productivity. And also about using it consistently in the same way to produce something that is of value. And if that is not, say for example, stabilized, then how can we deliver such things to the PMO, for example, who sees everything that keeps changing? So stability, inter-department deliverables from the software development and from project management, I would say those are quite big issues.
Maybe let me add a little bit more. Probably I will start off throwing back the question back to you. Why do you want to go Agile in the first place?
Well, it's an interesting question, and I'm looking at it in terms of being a project manager and having additional tools in the toolbox. Is that going to be something that I'm going to be able to then use in my very traditional
Okay.
I think John. So now you got a question with an answer.
Take that microphone away.
Yes.
Don't fight. Uh, Interesting. So, actually, my short answer is, yeah, it might be still keeping in your toolbox. Because going into Agile, it's not like it's a toy for us to play with, tools for us to implement. It really need to, coming from the top to the bottom, it's like the boss's boss needs to say, yeah, it's a go, and everyone else on the ground, it's really want to join to the bandwagon and go together with you, because this change is not really a small change, it's a big, big change. It's a change of mindset. To some people, it's like, woohoo, yeah, I don't have to do all the documentation. And the other side is, gosh, I'm worrying about my money. How do I control it? It's to some people, they lose their control where they have been so used to about the control, knowing about everything going on, knowing about the progress. On the other side, especially a developer, they don't like to work anytime they want, and now there's no one watching, they can do whatever they want, so-called. But it's not really that. It's in the past few setting that I had, it's really coming from the top. And I was like stuck in the middle, like, okay, this is the tool, go and use it. And when I using it, because I'm coming from a background of strong PMP, probably answer this gentleman's question as well about not using, throw away a lot of things. I come from a background whereby I learned CMMI first, and then I learned PMP, and then I have to put all the things that I learned from the PMBOK, put it into the CMMI process. I have to do all the things because there's someone come in and do the appraisal. Yeah, if there's no one watching you, yeah, you can skip a lot of stuff. But CMMI, they actually need to look at all the evidence and see, okay, this is your project charter. Did you go through the versioning control? How do you do the versioning control? And look at every single thing. How do you manage your requirement change and all that? And look at the evidence. They will ask you about the evidence. They will look at, they will talk to the people to gather the evidence. They will look at the system to look to gather the evidence. So I come from that background into jumping into the Scrum. Of course, to me, it's like, wow, now I'm free. But the boss still got the same question. I spent so much money. What are you giving me? When am I, by 31st of August, am I going to launch this version 2.0 with all this cool feature? Well, for Scrum guy, how do I answer? Well, you know, when we are there, they are not going to get this answer. They are not going to accept this answer. But so then I kind of like changing or going back to pick some of the PMP tool, put it into the Scrum tool, showing the evidence. Hey, see, according to Scrum, this is our velocity. Then according to like old traditional PMP project management tool, it shows we can do it, or we might slip a little bit. So it's really coming from the top and see how much. Well, of course, Scrum is the best thing is because it's so easy, and you have to practice every single event or the what do you call that, the ceremony, and also all the artifact. Don't miss any of that. For PMBOK, yeah, you can miss a lot of that. But for Scrum, don't miss any of them. You have to do every single thing, all the ceremony, all the artifacts you have to keep. It's just very, very little thing, but you have to do it. And of course, the boss will get back to you all the tough questions you faced. So don't think that When you're in Scrum, you can avoid all the tough question. You will still face the same question. Thanks.